were diabetes and high blood pressure. We have seen after he was diagnosed with cancer in the last stage, in the last days of his life, what he went through, how much he suffered. And yet, until 3 days or 2 days before he passed away, ultimately he was giving sittings, he was signing documents, he was making preceptors, he was talking to people, people were still in his room talking to him. The years go by quickly, more quickly in some ways than we would want, and too slowly than we would want in another sense. Yesterday, when our master gave me a copy of my father's diaries, I took it back to our flat and I read the first 4 or 5 pages. I mean, it's not as if I'm doing it for the first time, I know what there is in it. And I started crying because it was it was definitely the most difficult period in his life from any standpoint. I mean, when he went to Shahjahanpur, I went with him on that day, the 19th of April. And then from there on to Shahjahanpur, with revered Chariji Maharaj's remains, stayed there for the cremation. And I was mute witness to everything that happened after that. The 10 years after that were probably the most difficult years of our lives, our meaning our family. Because so much happened, good things, bad things, difficult things. My father once told me that happiness is fleeting and sadness is permanent. In those days, I did not understand what he was saying. I told him, please don't say things like this, nobody will come to Sahaj Marg, everybody will leave and run away. If there is no happiness, if there is no pleasure, if there is nothing to look forward to in life, then why would one continue living? And this was a question that I asked myself for almost a year after he passed. If I really did love him as much as I thought I did, why am I still alive? And yesterday, the reason I was in tears was because he has written the exact same thing. If you read the first couple of pages of the diary, 83, he is asking himself, why am I alive? But that's a separate story. We are here to celebrate his life. We are here to celebrate his birthday. We are here to celebrate him. And so the situation requires that we be joyous, that we celebrate him. All his life, he wanted people around him. He wanted life around him. He was always very lonely, so he wanted always to feel that he was not lonely. The number of people that he fed and clothed and gave presents to is unlimited. And every living moment he taught us how to live life. Now we can go on talking like this about him and then, we go into depression. That is not the intention here. I would rather start with an analogy, a farmer's analogy, because I am also a farmer in some ways. So you imagine that there is a farmer and he has some seeds, one handful of seeds, and he goes and plants that in soil. Some of the seeds are non-starters, they don't even germinate. Some of the seeds germinate, one crop finished. Some of the seeds germinate, they bring forth an abundance, and the seeds that they bring forth also go into the second generation. In Sahaj Marg, we call them prefects or preceptors or whatever. But out of all those seeds, there is one seed that is a master seed, and that is the successor. So if you see, we recognize Lalaji as the Adi Guru of the system. We recognize Babuji Maharaj, his successor and spiritual representative, as the founder of Sri Ramchandra Mission, who registered the mission in 1945, and he writes in his diaries that from the late 40s onwards, he used to sit in a train and tour India, sit in a third-class compartment, go to places, get off the train, have a bath, sit in a cycle rickshaw or just walk. What did he do? He transmitted wherever he went. What was the objective of this exercise? It was so that that transmission could take root wherever there was a willing heart. And this exercise he did for probably 10 years. And then in the mid-50s, you see the appearance of the first centers. Early 50s, mid-50s was when centers started to appear. Tirupati, Trichy, centers in Andhra Pradesh, centers in UP, centers elsewhere. One by one, one by one, one by one. And so in 1964, there were probably 20 or 30 people in Chennai when my parents started to meditate. And when I was first exposed to this wonderful system of Sahaj Marg, I was probably 7 years old at that time. So I have been involved with this mission for something like 53 years now, because I am now 60. In the diary also, if you read, there is this very, very poignant scene where he writes, and I was there with him. We came back after the cremation to Babuji's house to take leave of the family. And just before we entered the house, on the lane in front, he broke down completely. I had to hold him up with my arms. He was sobbing. His heart was completely broken. Many years later, I asked him, and he said, in the spiritual path, your heart has to be broken again and again and again, as many times as possible. If you look at a tree, when a tree grows, it sheds its bark every time. So every time there is a monsoon, and then there is a dry period after the monsoon, the tree's girth swells, and the bark starts to disintegrate, and it falls off. So also, the human heart, through suffering and sorrow, must expand, must become larger and larger and larger, which is the only way for it to become divine. And why is this important? Because as large as your heart is, so large is your capacity to receive transmission and to evolve. So my father also told me once that in Sahaj Marg, the only way to evolve is to suffer. The more you suffer, the more you evolve. And there is no point in fighting it, because suffering is inevitable. The moment we are born, we start to suffer, and that suffering only ceases when we die. So Lalaji Maharaj says, accept this suffering with joy, with gratitude towards your master, that he is giving you this suffering so that you may evolve. So in our lives, in the last 30 years or so, we have seen so much joy, so much suffering, so much unhappiness. We have seen Master go through hell.
Dear brothers and sisters, we will be having a meditation session from 10:30 to 10:45. During that period, we request you all to kindly keep your eyes closed A drone will be moving around you, taking a video of you all while meditating. So kindly do not get distracted by the sound and do not open your eyes. మెడిటేషన్ హాల్ వాలంటీర్స్కి ముఖ్య గమనిక అండి. మెడిటేషన్ హాల్ వాలంటీర్స్ సైలెన్స్ బోర్డ్స్ కానీ, స్విచ్ ఆఫ్ మొబైల్ బోర్డ్స్ కానీ, మెడికల్ స్టిక్స్ కానీ లేదా ఎటువంటి స్టిక్స్ కానీ పట్టుకోకండి. అందరూ మెడిటేషన్ చేసినప్పుడు మీరు కూడా వాటితో కింద కూర్చోండి. सो ड्रोन एक वीडियो कैमरा है जो कि हवा में उड़ता है. अब अभी देखे होंगे, एक बार ऑलरेडी उड़ चुका है. तो ये ड्रोन कोई मच्छर या कुछ नहीं है. तो ये एक हवा में उड़ता चलता एक कैमरा है.
फोटो वापस बावुंది వీడియో తీస్తున్నాడా కూర్చుంటే బాగా పడతారు.
That was the first phase. That was the farmer taking one muthi of seed and propagating it, transmitting it into the soil and praying that it might germinate and go forth. During Master's time, the task before him was to take this further, which he did, so that at the time of his Mahasamadhi, Chariji Maharaj had grown to something like 200,000 members, present in 125 countries.
ఈడంతా పాములు ఉండేరు. ఒరే ఏడుండేరు.